everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 4C Marketplace podcast. Today we have as our guest, Steven Fargo. Steven Fargo is the CEO of Datawing Global, a UAV services company servicing a wide array of different industries, but also focusing in on the oil and gas industry. Without further ado, Steven, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and your company? How did you guys get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And thanks for taking the time to put this together. Yeah, so my name is Steven Fargo. We started Datawing approximately 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago. And it was me and a co-founder, a gentleman named Landon Phillips. Our backgrounds are in aviation. So I spent a long time flying in the Air Force. I flew F-16s. And after doing that and getting out of active duty, I went to work for essentially a suite of oil and gas service companies. First as a program manager, then running one of the safety companies for a particular set of partners here out of San Antonio, Texas. And I did that for about 3 years. And that's kind of how we made our way into the oil and gas space initially. And then, we came up with this idea 3 years ago to start looking at the value of drones to oil and gas services, driving through South Texas, looking across right-of-ways, really just envisioning drones up and down all of the pipeline right-of-ways was kind of a first initial vision of ours. And then from there, we went out and explored a whole variety of other use cases and did some research with some local universities, looked at different sensor technologies, and decided we had enough there to go ahead and create a business, create a company, and we were off to the races from there. So again, we got started with our roots in oil and gas. We've since branched out quite a bit, actually, into some other industry verticals, both to construction and telecom and insurance. But through and through, we want to make sure that we stay true to our roots of oil and gas, and then also obviously make sure that we're able to do, all the industrial applications that apply to oil and gas construction and so on. So, So I really kind of see this confluence of, you guys' background in the Air Force, F-16 pilots, a confluence of aviation expertise, industry knowledge, and then kind of an eye towards innovation by looking out for these different pieces of technology. And you guys see it then. So you fully believe that drone technology is viable, perfectly doable right now? Yeah, absolutely. And, to touch on kind of what you initially said, that's one of the things that we very much try to hold on to, and that is our aviation background. Because, we're talking about what is defined as aircraft and things that fly in the sky. There is just, for us, it's very important to keep in mind that it's, there's a level of airmanship that goes into it. And then, yes, very quickly, we determined, the way that technology is moving within the drone space, both with the sensor technology and the drones themselves, it's moving very, very fast. But we felt that with our operational and execution expertise, that we brought from the military and how we're able to train and build our teams to use the latest and greatest technologies out in the field was an area where we felt like we really could do well.
It's almost like you can replicate technology based off of what exists and everyone has access to that, but you can't replicate that experience.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people and that when you know a lot about drones and you've flown drones yourselves and most of the people out there who've listening are aware of drones and what they can do. I think I read a statistic that 8% of Americans all own a drone at this point, which is phenomenal. And so those people know that it's you don't have to be a fighter pilot necessarily to fly a drone. However, when you're putting together a high quality, high level of service industrial program, that can scale, you want to make sure that you're doing everything right from the beginning, from
right. I mean, it's a high risk endeavor as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So, we felt just initially by putting together kind of a core set of fundamental beliefs and values on, listening to the client and solving problems for the client, but then also putting on that layer of the utmost in, aviation safety and standards and regulations and training, and you couple all that together, was going to be necessary to be a player in this space for the long term. And that has been true from what we've seen so far.
So that's a perfect segue for my next question here. You mentioned values and foundational beliefs that make up your company, but is that number one, what is your, differentiation? I think you've mentioned it, that aviation piece. What is your compelling message that's different from everybody else in the industry? And then two, what do you define as your values as a company?
Absolutely. Well, I'll probably answer that back to front the way you asked it. To start off with the values, first and foremost, we wanted to create an organization that really took care of our employees and our people first. And, we very much kind of believe in an upside down pyramid of leadership structure, meaning the people who are out in the field, the people who are doing the job, flying the drones, shaking the client's hands, they're the most important people in the organization. And every level down, all the way down, to essentially me at the bottom, who with this model is the least important person in the organization. We all try and support those above us, right? So that kind of is behind everything that we do. We just want to make sure that our people who are on the front lines have the resources they need to succeed. If they're happy and successful, then usually that translates well into the service industry and to the clients for what they're looking for.
I think I can tell you're a veteran when you have that team first mentality right there.
And we try and hang on to veteran employees and hire. We're over 50% veteran. We like that model. There's a lot of benefit to be gained when you're bringing on those types of folks. Just a lot of great experience, and they've seen a lot. So it's if you want to work with a solid group of folks who can work hard and can be calm and level-headed no matter what, then that's a good group to go after. But yeah, it all is in line with our values.
Absolutely.
And we wanted to make sure that as from a goal perspective, not only do we want to be one of the largest drone service organizations in the U.S., we also want to have the safest program. So that just goes in line with the discipline that we use out in the field. And when we start talking about that, what that means, a lot of groups can talk to that, but when you actually demonstrate that in practice and you can back it up with the metrics and the compliance and how you track all the jobs that you do, then that's what really, especially after 3 years, that gives us a little bit more leverage when discussing the capabilities drones can do in their particular service space. So that's all been very good for us in terms of, when companies hire us. Frankly, we're not always the first people that are looked at. We're not as much of a household name maybe as some of the really, really large groups, across the nation. But we are, I would say, just as big. We are nationwide, got hundreds of pilots, and we work every day all over the place. So we've been able to kind of, stay toe to toe with a lot of the competitors that way. And then as our clients have come to us, either being the second or third group that we've worked with, they're very quick to identify with us those values that I mentioned before, so that give them the exact value they're looking for. And it's been
that's kind of your differentiation or your compelling, you would say.
Absolutely. And it's, one thing of note, which is just interesting in the industry is even with our list of competitors or other people who do similar things as us, not every group is the same. We've very much taken a focus of putting the client first, so much that we will offer a huge wide variety of different services to meet their needs. So, our business model is a little bit twofold. In some cases, we'll be the pure service provider where somebody can come out, call us to go do the work, and we handle everything from data collection to analysis to whatever final product or deliverable they need. But on the other hand, we're also willing to work with clients who are interested in building their own internal program, because we just decided as a company 3 years ago that we ultimately just cared about what the client needed. And 3 years ago, it was a lot different because there was a lot of people didn't understand exactly what the drones could do. But through that process, we've been able to work hand in hand with some very large clients in oil and gas, help them build out their programs to become very, very successful, saving their companies money, from traditional inspection methods, and really making sure that they achieve profitable results. And in turn, that keeps a close alignment with us, to the industry, to that client, and of course, repeated business. And, as we learn, we just get stronger and stronger in how we can apply that to all of our services, either way. That's probably one of the biggest differentiators about us, is that we do a little bit of everything. We've got manned aircraft, we've got drones. We'll help you build your program, we'll do the program for you. So and people have learned to come to trust us with that approach.
No, that's great to know. I mean, as with anything in business, you have to maintain a certain level of flexibility, but also that flexibility is really grounded in what does your customer need? And I'm really glad to hear that is your focus. I mean, I'm sure that's everybody's focus too, but just within a realm of a service like drones that are just brand new and people are trying to really scope out how they can bring it into their service model, I think that is a perfect approach. So kudos to you guys on that.
Yeah. Sometimes you see people trying to combine products and services together. So it's a product that is a service.
Right.
And some of our competitors do that, which puts them at a little bit of a disadvantage, in my opinion, because they attempt to create a product, essentially a drone, that will solve problems that they think that the end user might have. But that may not work for every end user, as we've seen. I mean, we've got, several clients all in the same industry, but all do things just slightly differently, or even very differently from one another with the drones and drone related technology. So because we're able to be flexible, agnostic to products, and really just focus on the problem at hand with the client, that puts us in a unique position.
So taking a step back here, you've kind of mentioned, I know you guys are super heavy on the drone piece. One thing I do want to ask is, what is the greatest insight that you've gained while working in this industry, and how has it impacted you?
The most interesting insight. That's a very interesting question. I think I kind of alluded to it, but in 3 years perspective, actually, I've been doing this for a little over 4 years now. But in looking back, if you think about where, and I'm going to call the drone industry a separate industry, but when people were considering what they thought, how people would be using drones and how rapidly that would be taking off, it's very different than what actually set in as reality over the course of the last 3 years. So anybody who's still around and has been through it has seen the same struggles and the same challenges of the long sales cycles and the education needed and the regulatory hurdles and all of that. So from an insight perspective, really what's kept us focused through all those challenges, that extreme focus on the customer. When we said, look, I think we had a little bit of luck along the way too, but to say there's going to be a lot of things out of our control. There's regulation we can't necessarily, we can control, we can influence, but there's going to be clients, different industries, everybody's going to be at a different spot, on their timeline of how they decided to adopt drones into routine operations. Right. So how do you position yourself in a spot that's going to succeed throughout all those unknowns and throughout all those challenges? And really for us, it was, we were going to do whatever it takes, whatever resources it took to pick, a handful of solid clients in each of our verticals and get to know them and to build that trust. Right. And once you've established that trust and you've been able to stick it out over the last couple of years and build upon that, now that we're kind of on the other side of that hump and a lot more people are adopting drone technology, these early adopters are coming on board because they're seeing the benefits from the innovators and they're saying, we want to do that too. And now we've got the experience, we've got the referrals, and we've got the capabilities, and we're set up to be uniquely aligned with all those. So right. In hindsight, it was that focus on clients from day one that's really put us in a good spot.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because people have different approaches to client acquisition, but from what I heard from you, it's not, for you guys, it's less a matter of casting your net wide than it is kind of growing your reach deep within each client. So that's an interesting approach. And then, so in addition to that, you mentioned it earlier, there's a lot of regulatory hurdles. Technology is going to change. From your perspective, what do you think is going to have the greatest amount of impact on the industry as a whole over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
With hope, I hope it's the positive impact of the available technology. I hope that it's not something negative, that could really set the drone industry back. You know what I mean? Some drastic or catastrophic event, involving a drone could be devastating for the industry. So,
kind of like a black swan event.
Right. So I hope it's not something like that. But what I like and what I've seen is that the people who are, the solid stakeholders in this industry, from end users to OEMs to service providers, everybody in some way, shape, or form is banding together to hopefully advance this industry, as safely and as quickly as we can. But through all that, the technology advances happen so quickly, and it provides a lot of opportunity and challenge at the same time. And the regulations always trail that technology. So whether it's the capability for drones to lift certain things or have certain sensors on them or fly certain distances or what have you, it's always going to be on the front end of what the regulations will allow. So
that there's that gap of technology innovation with regulatory, getting that in place to govern and set some governance above all of it.
Absolutely. And that's what I think will eventually have the greatest impact on the next 3 to 5 years is going to be, where the regulations go. If you take a look at it and you see the advancements that have happened, obviously Part 107 was huge for the industry. Working back in the old 333 days wasn't what we needed to be able to survive from a commercial standpoint. So continuing to push that, and once we start seeing the opportunity to do more things in and around people, long distances, I think that's truly going to change the outlook. And that's only going to allow these great technologies to be utilized in a way that they'll just continue to advance. So, that's really what I'm looking forward to, is that the regulation to support what the technology has already enabled us to do. But I do understand why the FAA is being very pragmatic and careful about it. It is the busiest airspace in the world, after all.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And to some extent, too, it's kind of the same issue in terms of how fast regulations keep up with technology on the EPA side as well, especially for all of our audience out there that are on the EHS side of environmental compliance. So completely understand and respect that aspect of it. So you just mentioned, what you think has the greatest impact, but what about you guys? What about Datawing Global? Where do you guys see, what are you doing now to align yourselves with things that you see coming in the future?
So we've very much been focused on scale. We work with large clients, national clients, sometimes worldwide clients. So we want to be able to make sure we're always in a unique position to serve them no matter where they are. So for the last 2 years, we've been developing our own proprietary operational management software to do just that. So what that does is allows us to very quickly ingest lots of job requests, do all of the ins and outs with regards to the mission planning for the flight, from airspace checks to identifying available pilots and drones, connecting that all together and very quickly turning it around as a dispatch to execute on those jobs, obtain the right data per the job requests, and obviously work that through the cloud to get the deliverable back to the client. And focusing on that is an absolute must. I mean, you cannot be in this space without being technologically enabled. And we chose very early on that we didn't want to necessarily rely on anybody else to do that. We wanted to be the masters of our own destiny. And fortunately for us, we put together a very, very good product that allows us to be one of the few companies in the country that can do what I just described. And that's very, very large scale with very quick turnaround times for the data.
Well, that's really fantastic. And with that question, I think that wraps us up for today. I really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing your insight. And just one last question. If any people within our audience want to find you, what is the best place to do that? Either social media or website, et cetera.
Absolutely. Of course, our website, datawingglobal.com, has a lot of resources there, and we can be connected that way. I am personally up on LinkedIn, and we also have LinkedIn pages for Datawing Global. So I can be reached in any of those ways pretty easily.
Perfect. Well, with that, Steven, thank you for your time. We're super excited to have you on board for the 4C conference. We look forward to your presentation as well. And we look forward to keeping up with the Datawing Global story over the next few years.
Thank you very much.